silence only allows the abuser to abuse. So I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
I don't even know where to start. I just watched 3 out of, I think, 4 of Harry's interviews. So the ITV, the 60 Minutes, and the Good Morning America. And my brain is fried. The amount of delusion, the hypocrisy, the contradictions. These interviews should come with a warning. So I guess we'll just start off at the beginning. I'm not going to be covering each interview separately or anything because, believe it or not, I think he's pretty much rehearsed the script. His answers are near identical in all of the interviews I've seen so far. So I guess we'll start off with the question of why. Why Harry chose to write this so-called memoir.
The truth is something that I need to rely on. Felt like a good time to own my story and be able to tell it for myself.
After the scores of lies and deception that have emanated from the never-ending flapping pie holes of these two, which include misleading, as we like to call it, a court of law, Harry and Meghan would do very well to keep the word truth out of their mouths. I can't even count the number of times he used that word, by the way. He's clearly parroting his wife with,
"My word is peace, peace, peace. It's got to be peace. All I want is peace." And I went, no, I can't have peace without truth.
Peace can happen when there's truth. I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there.
You both wouldn't know what the truth was if your life depended on it. And as far as setting the record straight, I guess it was all just a figment of our imagination, our collective imagination, by the way, when we saw the South Africa interview in 2019, and then the Oprah interview in 2021, and then every single interview after that, the Netflix docuseries, the podcast. I mean, the list goes on. How many times do you want to set the record straight? In fact, you have tangled up the record so bad that it is just a mess, a tangled spider web mess. And it's funny how the interviewers all seem to have been hibernating these past 4 years and don't bring up this fact. It's like, well, haven't you already set the record straight 254 times? And when asked why he picked the title Spare, as if we needed any explanation.
I think it was just a really good opportunity to choose a title that had been somewhat used against me for a long part of my life and own that title.
By who? By the public, who adored you so much that you pretty much surpassed the Queen at one point with popularity? Is he talking about the family itself? I don't know. I mean, didn't his own mother use the word heir and spare? Does he begrudge her for that? To me, it all screams a deep-seated insecurity over being the second born. It just takes me right back to that Scar meme from The Lion King that I shared last video. Now, if you want proof that all of the questions were pre-approved and all of the answers were rehearsed, all 3 interviews asked pretty much identical questions, of course, to elicit identical rehearsed answers. So all 3 interviews ask him in a different way how he justifies the release of this book and this seemingly humongous invasion of privacy committed against his family. And his response?
The level of planting and leaking from other members of the family, trying to trash my wife and myself to the point where I had to leave my country.
And while we're on the topic of Harry's family and how evil and jealous and bitter they all are of Meghan, Harry goes as far as to say that there was this weird, awkward conversation where Charles goes, "I can't support both of you financially, by the way, just letting you know, we're not made of money."
It did seem a little bit strange that somehow the rules were being changed, or at least my partner was being guided on a very different path, should we end up getting married.
Now, I understand it's a little bit weird and bizarre for us, mere mortals, to hear about this almost 40-year-old couple still being supported by a parent financially, but I guess it's just another perk of being a member of the royal family. However, the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is smeared all over Meghan's body from head to toe. Millions of pounds worth of pudding, mind you. Not to mention, they got to live in Nottingham Cottage and then Frogmore Cottage entirely for free, bearing in mind the £2.4 million renovation. We also learned that he continued supporting them financially during the 12-month review period, so after Megxit. So this is what you call your father not spending money on Meghan. And you wonder why I call this man deluded. He says a lot of things about his family and William in particular, but to summarize, they were all so jealous of Meghan. They were driven mad with jealousy. So much so that they colluded with the evil media to drive Meghan out of the royal family and out of the country entirely.
This all started with them briefing daily against my wife with lies, to the point of where my wife and I had to run away from my country.
Now, does he offer any evidence to back up these incredibly serious allegations? Of course not. The evidence and the Sussexes, they're not the best of friends. But you know what we do have plenty of evidence of? A certain Meghan Markle doing just that and leaking photo after photo in a bid to outshine a particular royal, may it be Camilla or Catherine or William, or even Eugenie, her best friend, supposedly, if they had an important event or something going on for them on a particular day. Projecting much, Harry? We also have plenty of evidence of your incessant lies, such as your lying about your involvement with the authors of Finding Freedom, provided of course by William's aide, a member of William's office, Jason Knopf, who no longer works for the royal family, by the way. You know what else Jason Knopf provided evidence of? Proof that Meghan absolutely anticipated her seemingly private letter to her father being leaked, which, as we saw in the Netflix documentary, Meghan pretty much almost had a heart attack when she found out about Jason Knopf's involvement. We also have evidence of Meghan and Harry flat out lying about when they got married. I mean, they lied about something that the entire world tuned in to watch live, me being one of them. And as we saw from the Netflix docuseries at the very end, the shedding of light on the truth by Jason Knopf and others is deemed as an attack against Meghan and Harry. I don't know what to tell you, Harry. For such a proponent of the truth, you sure do seem quite intent on stifling it. And by the way, every time he denies the bullying allegations, he's pretty much calling all of Meghan's victims liars. Such a humanitarian, such compassion. And the cherry on top of this horrific cake, his profession of love for his family. He's not doing any of this with the intention of harming or hurting them, no. It's for the truth.
I love my father, I love my brother, I love my family. I will always do. Nothing of what I've done in this book or otherwise has ever been any intention to harm them or hurt them.
And can we just temporarily, just for 1 second, bask in the glory of Tom's comment about fathers here?
Of course, he's my father. I will always love him.
Well, not everyone loves their dad. I mean, you know, some people do, some people don't.
Right you are, Tom. Exhibit A. I didn't know that hurling insults and lies and accusing them of horrific things like racism is considered an expression of love. Speaking of racism, it appears that we were all once again hallucinating collectively as an entire society. And this includes their proponents, by the way, because don't forget, everyone who supports Meghan and Harry accuses the royal family of racism, purely based on that Oprah interview. But we got all of that wrong too.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even,
No, we didn't.
well,
The British press said that.
right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist? There was
Skin
concern
colour.
about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't.
Right.
Instead, what they were talking about was unconscious bias.
The difference between racism and unconscious bias, the two things are different.
So that Netflix docuseries, the 6 hours or so, where you essentially trashed not only your family, but the Commonwealth and the monarchy and everything it stands for. Did you forget that you both produced that thing? Time to pull out the dictionary, people, and upgrade the definition of racism, because clearly woke speech is taking over again. Meghan Markle in particular has no idea how to speak plainly. She just speaks in word salad, in insinuations, in, read between the lines, where she deliberately keeps skirting the line to keep the things that she says open to interpretation So that she goes, in situations like this, I never said it, I never said that. You may have interpreted that way, Oprah, with your mouth hanging open and your what? What?
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There are several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you about how dark your baby is going to be?
it. Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh.
But I never said the word racism. And if you never accused the royal family of racism, then why didn't you come out to correct the narrative when things pretty much exploded after these Oprah interview revelations? Did you ever bother releasing a statement and setting the record straight and going, oh, we didn't mean to accuse them of racism, this is just unconscious bias? You did it when people were speculating who the racist was. You went as far as to say, no, it wasn't the Queen and it wasn't Prince Philip. But then everyone else is fair game. And, oh boy. Certain situations I'm remembering now where I had to pause and just walk away. Just walk away, because it's enough to drive you as insane as they seemingly are.
But I suppose, isn't there a danger that people are going to think bad? You haven't identified which members of the family.
And I will never talk about that.
After everything that he's revealed so far, specifically in this book, he'll tell us about his frostbitten penis, he'll tell us about William's most intimate conversations with him, but he won't hold the racist to account, even though he harps on and on and on about his new favorite word. I think he recently learned it: accountability. I just want to know. I genuinely want to know. And I don't know why the interviewers haven't pushed this issue, why they haven't asked him. Accountability for what? For the countless allegations that you have zero evidence. After 6 hours and almost 3 years of making this Netflix documentary, you still haven't presented one shred of evidence against the royal family or the palace in their alleged collusion against you with the media. The palace, on the other hand, has plenty of evidence to back up their version of events, which is that they work tirelessly around the clock to defend your wife, her parents, and your relationship altogether. Statement after statement after statement. And we talked about what the palace has done to defend them. What about the family? The family that, by your very admission in the engagement interview, has loved Meghan, welcomed her with open arms.
The family together have been absolutely, solid support, and my grandparents as well have been wonderful throughout this whole process.
In the Netflix series, they talked about how far the family went to give them the wedding that they allegedly didn't want, that they set up just for us peasants. And where's the accountability from you and your wife? You are now officially the poster children of...
Wasn't me.
What is really going on here is Harry was expecting everyone to bow down to their whims. What Meghan wants, Meghan gets, right? When the royal family didn't do that, when they didn't bow down to their demands, when they didn't stifle the truth about Meghan's behavior, that's what Harry sees as trying to drive us out, colluding with the media. And from what I'm hearing, that's apparently what he wants accountability for. Harry is still convinced that after everything they have put their families through, there's still 100% room for reconciliation and forgiveness, as long as the royal family takes accountability for everything they've done, which we still don't know what they've done other than support and love them and lavish them with riches.
Forgiveness is 100% a possibility. I want reconciliation, but first there needs to be some accountability.
Where's the forgiveness for Thomas Markle? Or is it that only royals are worthy of forgiveness because of all the clout that the association with them gives you and your wife? Let's face it, the both of them have nothing to offer this world. And just when I thought he couldn't get more despicable and more heartless and more ruthless and cold, he is so similar to Meghan. I'm talking about this very intimate and private moment that he reveals with William that took place after Prince Philip's funeral.
Harold, you must listen to me. I just want you to be happy, Harold. I swear on Mummy's life, you'd used the secret code, the universal password. For nearly 25 years, we'd reserved that soul-crushing vow for times when one of us needed to be heard, to be believed. I simply didn't believe him.
And you say your family made no attempts at reconciliation. You literally just contradicted yourself, as you keep doing, by the way, over and over and over again. Can no one keep track of your contradictions and point them out to you, even in such a rehearsed environment? as these interviews, you really are a lost cause. And contradictions aside, that was heartbreaking. Your brother was imploring you, begging you to listen, to look him in the eyes. He even invoked that secret code that you both shared. If that doesn't convey how desperate William must have been feeling at that time, it's heartbreaking. It was hard for me. It's hard for me talking about it now because I have brothers. How do you turn your brother away in a moment like that? How do you dismiss him like that? You and Meghan? Two peas in a pod. And not to mention, it is yet again an invasion of William's privacy. Because I bet William never expected that conversation in particular would ever be shared with the world, where he was in such a vulnerable moment. But I'm glad it was shared because people can now see who the real monster is. And by the way, the list continues of attempts at reconciliation, such as the invitations to certain events like the Jubilee and potentially the coronation at this point. That's what we're hearing, that they are still invited. Oh, and let's not forget Prince Philip's memorial that you snubbed for absolutely no reason last year. And you're telling us that the family has made no attempt at reconciliation whatsoever and has in fact rebuffed any attempts on your end. Check out this hypocrisy, by the way. I just can't.
What they have to say to me and what I have to say to them will be in private, and I hope it can stay that way. There needs to be a constructive conversation, one that can happen in private, that doesn't get leaked.
Private, really? Yeah. Or do you mean you want to hold on to it so you can monetize it and publish it later? That seems more in line with your modus operandi. Now he says he's made peace. He says he's moved on. He says he's never been happier than he is right now in California with Meghan and his 2 kids. As he should be, by the way. He has a wonderful, glorious life. And he has plenty to be grateful and happy about. Which is what he says. But all of his actions right now, is that what you call being happy and moving on and being at peace? If this is what you do when you're incandescently happy, then I shudder to think what you both would do if you actually admitted to being miserable. And speaking of moving on, Harry gets asked why not just relinquish the titles? Maybe people will stop calling you a hypocrite. To which he responds with,
And what difference would that make? I can't ever get out.
you're entirely right in saying that you can't get out because you know that you would be entirely irrelevant. You have nothing to offer to the world other than your constant yapping and whining and throwing around your titles. So why on earth would you get rid of the one thing that is guaranteeing millions entering into your pockets in return for violating your family for the whole world to see? He's not on talking terms with his family, by the way. Surprise, surprise. I mean, he's being a very good disciple of Meghan's, isn't he?
We haven't spoken for quite a while. No, not recently.
She must be very proud. I guess the good news is they don't intend on ever returning as full-time working royals. I mean, I'm sure the royal family is letting out a huge sigh of relief there. But when Harry is asked why, this is what he has to say.
I don't think it's ever going to be possible. There is that third party that is going to do everything they can to make sure that that isn't possible.
That third party being Meghan, right? I could go on, I really could. I mean, he attacks the Queen's statement by saying that instead of supporting us, the palace, doubled down after the Oprah interview. I mean, God forbid someone doubles down in the face of lies and horrific accusations. Speaking of the Queen's statement, actually, he makes her out to be either a liar or someone who is completely, at the mercy of her handlers as a little puppet by saying that the Queen absolutely knew how miserable we were and she understood why we had to leave.
It was never a surprise to anybody, least of all her. She knew what was going on, she knew how hard it was.
That's not what she said in her statement. So, which is it? She's a liar or you're the liar? This interview and this book and the Netflix series, all they're doing is proving to us as the world that these are 2 incredibly delusional people who are completely lacking in any insight and are absolutely incapable of taking any accountability, his new favorite word. I will say that he is clearly very much traumatized by his mother's death. I mean, this is nothing new, and it features a lot in these interviews, and I'm sure in the book as well. What's really disturbing, though, is how he is still clearly convinced that his wife is pretty much his mother reincarnate and is next on the chopping block. He keeps bringing that up. I can't let history repeat itself. To me, it sounds like, and of course I don't know, but it just comes across, ever since the Oprah interview, that Meghan is using his grief to manipulate him and control him. She knows how much he loves her, and it seems like she's taking advantage of that in the most sinister way possible.
And if I see wrongdoing, I will be lured towards trying to resolve it.
How about looking in the mirror and starting there? Make sure you stand your wife right next to you, by the way. She has to be there in that reflection.